fairly modest church. Now, I think that was an interpretation, because we'll get to a much more modest church in the city a little bit later.
Maybe you can tell us a little more about some of the other people you met, other than this minister and the dancers.
Well, the hospitality, everywhere we went, we were greeted with generous hospitality, but two people that really stood out for me, we can go to the next slide, are people here familiar with the stories of, or familiar with the term, shall we say, of comfort women during the Second World War. Yeah. So during the Second World War, the Japanese commandeered, kidnapped women from across Asia and set up comfort stations. We would know them as brothels. And these were for Japanese men in the military. And for decades, this was an incredibly well-kept secret. The women would not talk about it. Everyone denied it. And then about 25 years ago, people started to come out and talk about it. And we had the honor of meeting Wanok Il, who's on your left. And she's 88 years old. And Bok Dok Kim, who's the other woman here, 90. And they are survivors. They're some of the very few survivors. And there's a small museum in Seoul dedicated to this. All told, the estimates are in excess of 200,000 women. They have documentation, stories, they have diaries of men who went. And we're quite unabashed about this. They recorded their diaries. They had performed some successful duty in their military career. They distinguished themselves, and they got a medal, and they got an extra trip to the comfort station. These women are, sorry, get a little bit emotional. They are the few survivors. The Japanese government has insisted this was not an organized thing. This was the whole idea, the whole concept was basically some renegade men and women who saw an opportunity, completely sidestepping the fact that there are maps, there's tickets, there's vouchers, there's diaries. Some hundreds of women still survive. Many did not. Many did not survive the time. So these two women met us. They were actually being interviewed just prior to when we got there for a television program. And we came, and they shared a little bit of their story. But most of all, what they shared was that this is a story that is dying, because the government, both in Japan and Korea, are denying it. And they feel that the Korean government is complicit with the Japanese government to sort of sweep this under. There was a statue, an artist made a statue in bronze, and it shows a young woman sitting on a park bench. And on the other side of the park bench is an empty space for the old woman that she did not become. The statue was removed at the request of the Japanese government. So, stories being told. Excuse me. These are two women that were really a focus of our trip.
I just want to give you a second there. But the next question has to do with a surprise. So perhaps this was a certain kind of surprise. And even this morning, a bit of a surprise that you're taken back there so quickly and so deeply. But were there other surprises on the trip?
So let's go to the next slide. On our first day, this is also a very emotional time. Our first day, our host gathered us up in the early part of the afternoon. We are going to go to one of the palaces. There are a number of ancient palaces scattered through Seoul. And we took our bus, we got to the palace. We went in a side door into the large courtyard. And then they probably took us out the front door, which leads at the top of a long street. Think of University Avenue. Big wide street, traffic on either side, and a boulevard down the center. But a boulevard that you can use for exhibits and events. And there was a large country, traditional crafts and costumes. It was an event like any other. There was a lot of young people in traditional costumes because on the weekends, if you wear traditional costumes, you get into all sorts of things free. Okay. So we saw all these young people going down the street in traditional Korean costumes with their phones in front of them, texting away madly. There was a bunch of them on skateboards doing acrobatic things in these really extravagant costumes. And they took us the length, and we stopped at various exhibits of craft, and then they took us to this exhibit. And a number of years ago, a ferry capsized outside of Seoul in Seoul. It was the Seoul ferry disaster. And some 350 people, most of them young people from the high schools, going on an excursion, were lost. The family and friends, we go to the next slide. The family and friends have never been satisfied with the inquiry into this. There are still many bodies missing. And they keep this shrine on the street to remember, to challenge the government, and to ensure that there is continued pressure to find out what happened and hold responsibility. This was a complete surprise because we had been walking down the street and it's a party atmosphere. I don't have a picture of it, but they were handing out these paper hats, great huge paper hats in lime green to protect us from the sun. And everyone was in these hats. Think of the flying nun without the wings. You know, this is a great huge paper hat. And we're all there and we're laughing and they say, let's just go in here. And here's this solemn place of remembrance.
And so it seems that you had more than one experience on this trip that you would really call a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. And were there others?
So if we go to the next slide, this is an extraordinary space. And I've been wrestling with the spiritual meaning of this. The DMZ, as it's called, the demilitarized zone. Familiarity with this in any much way? Yeah, fair enough. So the line between North and South Korea is basically a line they drew across the 38th parallel. And then to maintain this, there's 4 kilometers on either side, which is the zone. So it's 8. Is it 2 or is it 4? Now I'm confused, I can't remember. There's this zone of a couple of kilometers on either side of the line, which is the no man's zone, so to speak. And the bizarre thing is, this is a huge tourist site. The way you go into hotels here and you see brochures for trips to Niagara Falls, you go into your hotel lobby and there's stacks of brochures and tours to the demilitarized zone. And it's an extensive tour. There are dozens of coaches and buses. Look at this sign, the demilitarized zone, and I'm standing there. These are 6-odd feet high in bright colors. There's a carnival atmosphere. At the entry point where you transfer from your coach from, say, Seoul to explore this, there are food booths, like a food court. There's a theater. And there's also an amusement park with a Ferris wheel and a little roller coaster and a scrambler type of thing. There's this party atmosphere, which completely belies the fact that we're in a country that is still at war. North and South Korea are not at peace. They have a truce. They have a standing arrangement that they will not fire on each other. But it's not peace, there is no treaty. And at the same time, so we're actually standing in a war zone. And along with this, there's exhibits, there's propaganda, there's a huge amount of propaganda. We watched this film that seemed like it was right out of the 1950s, 60s Cold War, about how, we're standing and defending this. And oh, by the way, the interesting thing is the demilitarized zone is also a wildlife sanctuary. They had these wonderful pictures of birds and little animals. I mean, we almost expected Bambi to go bounding through. But at the same time, there's guns, there's observation towers, there is barbed wire. When we go through one of the exhibits, like any good tourist attraction, you end up going through the gift shop, exit through the gift shop. One of the most popular souvenirs is a small plaque that says, "I visited the DMZ," and has a little piece of barbed wire attached to it. One of the places we went in this was also a tunnel. A tunnel that had been drilled and mined out by the North Koreans to invade South Korea. And you traverse down this long, you're walking very quickly, and it takes about 40 minutes to do it. So you could do the math of what the distance is. It's a long tunnel down that gives access to the actual tunnel when you get there, the bottom. And you walk along it with rough stone on your head. We're all wearing hard hats. And you get to a place where you can peek through a hole and you can see the other side. And then you immediately turn around and do it all and go back. And there's just this long stream of people because this is a huge tourist site. Ironically, it's for non-Koreans. Native Koreans, citizens of South Korea, are not allowed to go to it. Not permitted.
And yet it would be so meaningful for families that are still divided.
And there are so many. So let's go to the next slide. This is one of the observation outposts that we visited very quickly. And from here we could see North Korea. Let's go to the next slide. Now the spiritual side of this experience for me came about because there are two things. This is a train station. And this train station was built as the last train station north